Hello, I forgot to record an intro because I feel like utter garbage. I'll keep it short and sweet. I got a sewing machine for Christmas and I want to start learning how to make clothes and cosplays with it. So let's turn an old tablecloth into a skirt. This is the tablecloth in question. $2.99 at a thrift store, nearly perfectly circular, perfect to turn into an article of clothing because it saved me a little bit of work and a lot of geometry. I folded the fabric into quarters so it would be easier to find the center and measure the radius and diameter of the circle where I would be putting the article of clothing on. Just to make sure this was accurate, I measured my hips the best that I could. I'm not really a math person, so it was a little bit off. I took a tape measure and a pencil and pinned it to the center of the skirt and started to make a mark around where I was supposed to cut the circle out. Then I cut it out. After unfolding it, it did look a little bit wide, but I had to try it on to make sure that it fit, and it fit for the most part. There was just a slight gap by my hips that needed to be taken in a little bit, but that was what the seam allowance and gathering is for. Just in case I accidentally gathered it too tightly to fit over my hips, I cut a slit into the back of the skirt so it would be easier to take on and off. I later found out that this wasn't entirely necessary. Then I took out a whole bunch of pins, so many pins guys, and started pinning the hem of the waistband. You know how I said earlier that math is not my strong suit? Yeah, this was true for this as well. I measured about 3 centimeters down, close to an inch, and after looking at it, I just realized that wasn't enough, so I had to take all of my pins out and start all over again to make it go down a little bit deeper, just so there was more room for error. Then I could break out the sewing machine.
I wasn't recording that whole time! I had like half the thing and the camera wasn't on! Oh no!
Yeah, the entire first half of this was not recorded at all, but this went very, very smoothly, so there really wasn't a lot to document. Before starting a huge project like this, I did learn how to actually use my machine with some scrap fabric and clothes that I didn't care about that I wanted to mend, just so I could get the hang of things, and it is so much simpler than it looks. Where has this been all my life? I am so happy that I was finally gifted one and didn't have to invest in one either, lol. And look how clean and tight that is, hello? Oh my gosh. For whatever reason, I still decided to finish that slit in the back by hand. I guess it's just hard to break old habits. Because my machine was on, and right there. I would just have to thread it. Oh, it's because I probably didn't want to thread it again. But it would have been so much faster if I had just sucked it up and threaded the machine. However, hand sewing is still very calming to me. And then we basically had a skirt. And it was lovely to me. I had to safety pin it to see what it would look like on me, but it was sinking very, very low on my body. So I brainstormed a solution. And by brainstormed, I mean found neon green ribbon to use. It wasn't exactly the color that I wanted, so I tried a couple of different dye techniques to make it a little bit darker. The first I saw online where you take boiling hot water and paint and then let it soak in there. But as I made this, I saw that the color was not taking well, and also it smelled absolutely terrible. Do not recommend. Then I tried food dye. Putting the color on raw was perfect, but I knew that it was going to get messy, so I made it a dye bath, again with more super hot water and like 20 to 30 drops of this. I read the directions on the back of the box to make sure I was getting enough color. This experiment worked a lot better, so I just dunked it all in and stirred for a good long while. However, even though the color took and was nearly perfect, when I put this out to dry, all of the color just disappeared and didn't hold. I guess because it isn't meant for fabric, it didn't stay, and the water also diluted it and made it even more prone to just disappearing. So I sucked it up and did the messy technique instead and just raw dogged the dye. To keep my hands and my table from getting any more stained than it already had been, I used some cotton balls to swab on the dye the way that you would with actual fabric dye, which I was not going out to buy because it's very, very cold up here right now and I don't feel like leaving my house. This had no right being as satisfying as it was. absolutely horrible to clean up in the end, but just watching it transform before my eyes was beautiful. Look at that color, it looks almost so natural. And now that it was done, I could attach it to the skirt. The first thing I did was pick out the center and where the bows in the back would be tied. And then I finally could sit down and sew it after taking those measurements. It was a little bit smaller than the actual circumference of the skirt, so I had to go through with a singular thread and gather it super duper carefully. I had to do this twice because the thread is so thin and the fabric is so thick that it just wouldn't stay put without me using a little bit of fabric glue and a honkin' large knot. Keep in mind that the fabric was thick because this will cause issues in just a second. Once the gathering is done, I can transfer the skirt back to the machine. However, little did I know is that because the fabric was so thick, I should have changed the tension. I still don't fully understand how that works, but I do know that it's an important factor to any project going smoothly. So, when I finally put this ribbon on the machine, all hell broke loose.
Something's not right. Oh my god, what? It broke. Okay, I have a replacement, but I need to, stop.
I have good news and bad news about how this is going. The bad news is I did have to seam rip the entire waistband because it simply was not clean and kept bunching up threads and it just was not going to hold. And after ripping the ribbon out, I'm not sure if it's usable because most of it looks like this now. And I would probably have to find something else, but I really don't want to spend money on that because this is just not something that I'm going to be wearing a lot. The good news is, though, that the gathering of the skirt made it fit correctly. And if that ribbon were on there and if I were to tie it around my waist the way that I had planned to, it would fit perfectly. So I'm at a bit of a crossroads. I'm not sure what to do. So I'm going to take a break and I'm going to reconvene once I have a game plan. Defeated, I let this project sit for 2 whole days, not knowing what to do. And then, suddenly, it hit me, back in my room, the pile of clearance ribbon that I bought at Michael's after Christmas. One of those ribbons had to work, so I dumped it all out, and then I found it. A subtle, thin, yet sparkly thread that I could use to make the skirt a lace-up. I got to work cutting out little bits of ribbon that I would turn into loops that a larger piece of ribbon would be threaded through. I marked where on the closure that the loops would go and then pinned them down so I could sew into them later. This was a very satisfying process as well because I got to make super teeny tiny loops and just stick them on. I made a total of 10 loops, 5 on each side, and it was a little bit tricky because the super tiny pieces started fraying if I didn't attend to them right away, but I just love them. They added just the right amount of glitter and whimsy to it. Also, I was very mad at my machine for obvious reasons, so I did this part by hand too. Again, machine would have been quicker, but when you're mad at technology or mad at anything, honestly, you don't make the smartest decisions. So I sat there doing it all by hand and having a grand old time doing so. To prevent further fraying, I put some globs of fabric glue on the ends that I had just sewn down. One of them was threatening to come off, so I put a little bit of extra on there. The loops weren't 100% symmetrical, but they got the job done. They're so cute, too. I'm not sure why, but they're just so cute. Then I cut out the larger piece of ribbon that I would be using to lace up the lace-up part and started threading it through the holes, super duper carefully. I am so glad I did this because even though it wasn't 100% to my size, it's just so nice to have a closure that works. It worked and that was most important to me about my first major sewing machine project. I say it's a sewing machine project even though I only used it for a grand total of 2 things, but it counts to me. I tied the laces into a little bow, and to once again prevent fraying, I singed the edges. It's off camera here because I had it super duper zoomed in so you could actually see it. And finally, my perfect autumn skirt was complete. Here's what it looks like on! Oh my gosh, just look at it styled with the outfit. It looks so much better than it used to. And look at the twirl! The twirl! Most important factor of any skirt, in my opinion. As you just saw in this video, there were multiple things that I did wrong and honestly could have improved on. I'm actually going to redo the gathering at some point before I wear this again. But dude, I made clothes! And that makes me super happy and satisfied. Thank you for watching me struggle a little bit, and hopefully you'll stick around to see me improve. See ya!